Joe, you have a relationship that goes back to the 1920s with exporters and with the agricultural community. The Port of Stockton really was designed with that community in mind, wasn't it?
Yes, definitely. It's been, this whole valley is agriculture related, and the port here is a critical part of that.
Could you describe some of the things that you do for the Marine Highway Service? I know that there were some issues with containers and chassis. Could you describe what it is that Antonini does in that regard?
Well, we do have an entity here that provides an on-site CY, container yard, for users. Typically it would be the steamship lines. We also operate a chassis pool, and then at our terminal in Lathrop we also operate a container yard there where we have containers staged. And that's really critical for the shippers and the receivers, is if the containers are still within Oakland, the barge system won't work. There needs to be a large supply of containers right here in the valley in order for people to go get.
Okay. And could you explain for people who don't know what this is, what a chassis pool does?
Yeah, a chassis pool basically is a trailer that the containers sit upon. And so a chassis pool basically is where truckers can come in, pick up their chassis and container, and then either load it for an export or pick it up as an import and deliver it and return it back, thus enabling them not to have to go on to 580 and add traffic and congestion to get it back to Oakland.
On the subject of the 580, over your life experience working between here and Oakland, how has the traffic on the 580 gone up or down?
Yeah, the 580 traffic has definitely not gone down. Typically our drivers leaving Lathrop in the morning in order to get there to Oakland at the terminal opening time will spend about 2 hours on the road, and that's a 64-mile jaunt. And in the afternoon when they leave the terminals, it's at least a 2-hour drive home. So it's very troublesome to compete in an environment where you're spending 10 to 12 hours to get one load from Oakland to, let's say, Lathrop.
Okay. Joe, there's a number of major name companies who are out here in the San Joaquin Valley. I mean, almost everybody that you would know, from Safeway to Walmart, is out here, correct?
Yes, yes.
So wouldn't it be logical or at least helpful to have somebody who could take your trucks or your containers at the Port of Stockton and relieve you of the burden of having to go all the way into Oakland and back?
Oh, most definitely. And that's what I meant by the awareness. There are still some people that aren't aware of the 580 service and the benefits that it could bring to those shippers and receivers.
I've talked to Mark Tellini about this issue of attitude, and he said to me that one of the most difficult issues that the Port of Stockton had in marketing the M580 service was a very conservative attitude towards logistics, in which moving trucks by water just didn't figure. How do you persuade people to look at something different?
Well, I think in the end, it's that awareness factor again. The steamship lines, which are the big players in moving these containers to and from, and the shippers who produce all the products for export and receive all the products for imports, need to really understand the transportation end of the business, in the sense that costs have risen in the last 12 months substantially, and are going to continue to increase as the driver pool becomes worse, equipment becomes more expensive, congestion does not get relieved. So in the end, it'll be an economic factor for them to decide which way is the cheapest. Cheapest is not always the best. As everybody knows, there are other fees involved with containers where they may be paying demurrage because of the delays in Oakland. So when you add up all your logistics costs, Stockton is an advantage, in my opinion. It also allows the local people to push for an overweight corridor, which would allow them to move heavier containers over the water, receiving more product or exporting more product at the same cost.
What kind of products would be covered by the overweight corridor?
Oh, right now, currently importing into Stockton, there are several bulk commodities, a lot of feed product. A large paper company here in Stockton would actually like to see the overweight corridor happen. They bring in large rolls of paper. Bulk wine and case good wine is also another opportunity to where heavier loads could come here and not have to be broken down, transloaded, which would reduce costs overall.
Okay. How do you get the Walmarts and the Safeways to buy into this?
Well, that's, I think, been one of the struggles, is getting a large player to really take a look at their logistics moves and where they're located currently. There are a couple of rather large businesses that are locally here, domiciled, and they have participated in the barge. I think ultimately it needs to have more frequent sailings, and there needs to be a full-blown container yard for multiple steamship lines local.
How frequent does the service need to be to start attracting these guys?
I would say a minimum of once a week, and preferably twice a week. If it was twice a week, it would meet most sailings in Oakland, and I don't believe it would need to sail more than twice a week unless, in fact, the volume dictated it.
Okay. One of the things that you hear from some people is they're saying, well, you know, I'm getting my container stuffed and I'm getting ready to go out the door, and the barge is still a couple of days away, and it just seems to be easier for me to just go directly to Oakland. Is this a false sense of security for people based on some of the circumstances you've described with the delays?
Well, I think it's a real situation for many of the shippers. However, through planning and forecasting, the barge could meet their needs. But again, it's relying on multiple parties sitting at the table and realizing where the advantages lie. And so that would be, again, the steamship lines, the shippers, not only the Port of Stockton, but the Port of Oakland also. I believe it can be solved if everybody is at the table.
When you've talked about awareness, are we getting enough support from the general business community and community organizations? Do enough people know about this service and the benefit it is in terms of traffic mitigation and pollution mitigation?
I believe that there could be more awareness brought to the community. There are many shippers that are high on the project that are currently not using it. And I believe they're waiting for, again, that one big player to come on and say, okay, this is a situation that will work. But in the end, I believe more awareness needs to be made to the public. And I guess if they were to be on 580 in the morning, they would probably realize the potential opportunities that there are.
When you're waiting in line at Oakland, is your engine on?
Typically not, no.
Okay.
No, they're able. However, they do have to, every time they move up, they will have to turn it on and move up in line. So while they're actually sitting, the engines are off, but there is a lot of idle time there, just moving forward and positioning yourself in line.
Okay. Finally, Joe, could you talk to us a little bit about the history of your company, how you got started, your relationship with the agricultural community?
Sure. We started in 1926, and myself and my sister are third-generation owners today working for the business. And in the beginning, we were strictly an agricultural company. We actually had farming roots here, and we hauled produce from here to the Bay Area daily. We were a franchise for the local produce area. The canning industry started in the 40s or 50s, and we were fortunate enough to become involved in that. And that's where our roots really grew, was hauling primarily peaches and tomatoes for the canning industry. In the early 90s, we started a freight hauling company, and that's the company that's hauling the containers today. And so we've diversified, but however, still primarily it's an agricultural background
Okay.
for both of our companies.
Great. Okay. Joe, thank you very much.
Thank you.